Right, evening everyone. Thank you so much for coming to Jigsaw Media's 2025 Tech Preview. Thank you very much to Seagate, who are our headline sponsor for tonight. They've provided all the food, so thanks to those guys. As you've seen around you, we've got lots and lots of things happening. I'll go through those a little bit later at the end, just so you've got a kind of better idea of what you're looking at on each kind of booth. I'm Chris, I'm the head of innovation. You've probably seen me multiple times. Unfortunately, I can't innovate myself looking younger in that horrendous picture of myself. But yeah, I was tempted to use the one from 7 years ago, but I keep getting told off for using it exactly. I did try the AI thing earlier and it didn't go well. So what we're going to look at today is a 2025 tech preview, the media landscape and what 2024's looked like, and kind of a little forward looking into 2025. Me and Skeggsy thought it'd be a fun idea to see what AI would come up with as a bumper for this. So the winter tech event for post-production and broadcast is the perfect platform to explore the latest technology trends, expand your professional network and discover new business opportunities. We hope to see you there. Let me know if we deliver any of that. That would be really good. For any of you guys who have been to kind of any of my presentations before, I do like to use these, and unfortunately there is one person here who came to my talk this morning over at Apple, and a guy called Evan Shapiro, who is a self-styled media cartographer who looks at the business landscape for the media industry. I think it's like, I could stare at these things for days. I usually put the 2021, 22, 23, etc., but we'll just look at the 24 stuff. So this is from this one is from May, I believe. So keep an eye on that kind of bottom right-hand one, as it is to you in NVIDIA. But I think, the way that we're consuming media still is ever changing. Hands up, who watches linear TV anymore? One. Brilliant. Okay. But what's that for? Sport, right? But you must watch live sport. Probably live sport and news is probably the last bastion of linear television that as we know it. And as you can see, as we progress even through this year, the massive rise of NVIDIA, even though it wasn't huge already, have now become the most kind of valuable company in the world. And all that is basically demand driven by those platforms. And the reason I kind of always point this out is the fact that they're effectively known by Evan as the kind of media Death Stars, and their gravitational and influential pull to everything around the industry is so phenomenal that you can't really kind of get away from these tech giants. The demand for media is so high that I think pressure is really put on our kind of industry to kind of deliver that as well. And also certainly with NVIDIA, the AI demands for high compute and high GPU has obviously elevated them to a position that I didn't think they'd see themselves in kind of 5 years ago. I'm not a strategist, so there we go. So it all looks very healthy in terms of kind of business-wise in the media industry. However, can anyone tell me what their motto for 2024 was? Any guesses? What was the kind of pretty much over? Thank you, Nick. Well done. So yeah, survive till 25. It's no secret. I think we saw it absolutely everywhere, and it really was the motto that everyone had. And again, it was a tough year for post. Obviously, coming off the back of COVID, which was a long time ago, we're still seeing the effects from that now. We're still seeing post-production being very, very lumpy since the strikes at the end of 2023. And I think anybody who's kind of really thriving is doing a really good job in this industry. And again, it's not just the media companies as well. We can see the Thames Water one as well, but it's affected pretty much everybody. The whole idea of cutting costs in a tough economic climate is something that really has affected this post industry and the broadcast industry alone. But what I wanted to look at in terms of 2024 was some of the good things and some of the kind of interesting things. If we take a look at some of the kind of major trade shows as well, if we look at NAB, 54% of people who went to NAB were there for the first time. You probably heard me talk about this in April, but the numbers were down. That's really interesting. The biggest trade show for us in the world, the numbers are down, but yet 54% of people were new. How does that make any sense? If you were there, you'd understand that it was very AI heavy themed. However, it had a massive focus on the content creators, the YouTubers, and there was an entire hall dedicated to that kind of vertical as well. So a very different industry to what we were used to going to a traditional NAB, etc. And if you go back to IBC a couple of months ago, numbers are actually quite different. So actually, it's trending upwards. More, 4.5% increase from last year. Still nowhere kind of really back at the 2019 numbers, around 56,000. But actually, it's a good indication that these trade shows are still relevant if you feed people the right content. It was a valuable show. There was an increase in announcements. There's a lot of value there, certainly from the networking side, and I'm pretty sure we've all been in the beach bar many, many times. But also several mergers and acquisitions, in advance of the show that was kind of really easy for us guys as solutions providers to be able to introduce customers to who might be confused or, trying to understand how they fit into all this. But actually still really relevant. And IBC kind of really pushed this idea of their core 3 pillars, which was AI, fighting disinformation and fostering talent. And we ended up with the IBC Accelerator project, which is great, designing weapons to fight against disinformation, which was the first time we've actually really seen the broadcast industry collaborate together to really work on an initiative to say, we're sick of this. AI is fantastic, but there's a lot of disinformation going around. I think, funnily enough, the irony was they were using AI as a helper for that. So there's lots of tools out there, but I can see the way they were going was excellent. Fostering talent, we know all about the kind of skills crisis that we've had over the past couple of years, but IBC running the talent program, Rise have been really influential, certainly in our industry, and tackling the kind of gender equality. And then the new strategy of the new talent pipeline as well, all being driven by these initiatives. So some really good things to see. The things that I kind of took away from IBC were, AI obviously, we'll cover that in a little bit. I'm sure everyone's sick and tired of hearing of it. I nearly bought a t-shirt that said Rage Against Machine Learning, just because I was so bored of it. But anyway, the way I saw it was, if you took a look around the show, and I'll cover this a little bit later because this is the way my brain was thinking before we even went to the show, was it really is about kind of platform building and integration. And I'm going to use integration quite a lot, so I apologise in advance. And this idea of cloud first, we've all seen the movie Labs 2030 vision of everything's going to be in the cloud and initiate in the cloud or be pushed to the cloud first by 2030. And I think they claim to be something like 53% of the way, or something like that. So those were the kind of main themes from there. But I think to look at IBC versus NAB, very different shows, and there is still massive relevance for us, certainly in a networking standpoint, but also in the way that people are collaborating together. And again, it's not all doom and gloom in 2024 as well. We saw some tech reimagined as well. We saw Airframe from Media Anywhere, which really kind of redefined the way you'd play media back from the cloud. Like, I'd never seen anything quite like that. I saw at NAB and then at IBC as well, was predictive editing properly in existence. Sentient style AI that was really kind of pushing the boundaries to say, here's a feature film, have a look at it, understand the media, give me a promo, and allowing you to make decisions along the way, almost in that kind of co-pilot way of working, which is really cool. Lucid Link have just introduced their 3.0 file space as well. So there's movements in that area. We've done so much work with those guys in the past, but they're rethinking that, making sure the collaboration tools and their AWS partnership, and looking forward towards the future for different platforms rather than just, the standard kind of broadcast market. We saw a lot of kind of online SaaS-style project platforms as well, like Strada and Tanuki, come out of the woodwork. We've been waiting a year and a bit for Strada, to be honest. We introduced Film-Like Nara in the year as well, with some great integrations that we helped push in there with Massive and the guys at Pixit with Ingenia. We saw more and more cloud-native transcoding platforms that are incredibly clever. They're learning from what the load is on your system and dynamically scale to your needs. We've seen more and more cloud productions, so taking live productions, live events, and moving them into the cloud. I worked on a couple of those personally, but it's offering more diverse sports to more people without the huge technical overheads that a large like broadcast production would take. Vision Pro has been a kind of really big push for Apple, but when we talk about virtual galleries, actually having that in a headset, that's some really interesting ways of looking at things. And even for color grading and working in a kind of virtual environment, there's some crazy stuff going around. And 2024 really did have that kind of air about it for me. We saw SDI being replaced or worked in hand with IP transformations, whether it be NDI or whether it be 2110 or SRT workloads for the live productions in the cloud. And of course, everyone seemed to have a dark mode this year. I did make a joke about, sorry, Avid, with iNews with its dark mode, and even Adobe had a couple of new dark modes as well. So I always kind of like to make a joke of that one. So, theme, survive to 25, or is it thrive in 25? We've seen a lot of people talking about this. It seems to be the idea from a lot of producers that the industry is only going to get better, that things are going to go on the increase, but I've also heard a lot of things around, has anyone heard the other one? Exist in 26. So that's a nice new one. So, you know, being nice and positive about thrive in 25, they're like, no, we'd just like to exist in 26. And I think the way I look at it, and I heard someone use this phrase at the DPP event last week, and it really kind of stuck with me, was 2025 being a foundational year for actually streamlining. Now, we talked about it quite a lot in 24. It was like, how do we do things different? And I'm sure if you've come to some of my presentations, you're probably bored to hear about it all. But I think 2025 really is the chance and the time for everybody to take a look at how they're doing things and redesign that. You know, efficiency really is the absolute key. We did a big case study around the EFL and how we helped redesign their workflow for 1,800 games a year, you know, moving them onto an Adobe workload, but also how do we automate all the graphics, pull everything in, naming conventions, all those kinds of things need to be prevalent in the workflow. Is it automation that's required? And how are people reimagining and redesigning their content supply chain? I'd say every single presenter at the DPP last week, barring 3, and they were the social media platforms, all said they were looking at redesigning their content supply chain from ingest to delivery, making sure everything's in common formats and frame rates, naming conventions need to be right, project and campaign structure, and all that part comes down to integration. And I think we've never been in a better place to really understand how that works. And that leads into your asset management, finding your stuff. We're dealing with more and more disparate files, aren't we? Generally, for most people in the room, probably we're used to, you know, moving images, like video files, whether they're in MXF format, whether they're in .mov, whatever they are, whether they're managed by a media database like Avid have done forever. But, you know, how do we access and consume those as we go forward? How do we build on the top of that platform using multiple storage locations? Is it on cloud? Is it on-premise? Is it in both? How do we review and approve those assets? How do we track as well? And the most important thing, certainly with cutting costs, but actually making money, is actually monetizing the content that you may have sitting somewhere that you can't find. I know these aren't new concepts. I just think it's really interesting that over 2024, we talked a lot about it, but I think in 2025, this is really where the push is going to go, is people looking for that platform to build to get to this area. And security obviously being, you know, the utmost importance in our industry. And again, I'm going to use that word integration as well, and I'm going to keep coming back to that. I have to talk a little bit about AI. Finally, we've actually, you know, obviously it's pretty prevalent in a lot of things we use, including your mobile device. It's in your pocket. Machine learning's been on there for a long time. But we're actually starting to see some proper real world cases now where, you know, outside of the hype of the trade shows and everyone doing AI, you know, we're seeing, you know, real-time AI subtitles in broadcast. That was not really done before last year, and I think there'll be a massive push to that this year. We've seen massive innovations in transcription and image analysis. These things are really, they exist and they're usable. Huge advancements in Adobe Firefly's model, Avid pushing Ada, for instance. You know, these companies really know that AI is the future, but it's also been the past as well. I think we forget that it's existed for quite a long time. The machine learning part has it, but there is so much hype around it that I think we can get blinkered by, you know, why it's there. You know, I talked about AI-assisted subtitles, but AI advert targeting. We've got more streaming platforms now than we've ever had, and the majority of users are consuming, non-linear television, so it's easier to target people that way. And an interesting one that I saw is AI streamlining for infrastructure architecture as well. It's understanding the workloads that you actually have within your platform and automatically scaling out. I mean, is that automation or is that AI? So it's always kind of that question, that's my second bullet point, is always one that kind of really, the conversations that I get in with people is, what do you need? Do you need artificial intelligence, or do you actually just need automation that a human designs? I think that's where we put this down to, where's the human intelligence in all this? We certainly need to preserve the creative integrity for the stuff that we do. Otherwise, you don't become creative anymore. And that is that's the bones of our business, right? And it's finding the right tools in the chain as well. We don't need to just add AI for the sake of it. Does it actually solve that key efficiency issue? And does it give you any cost saving? Because if it doesn't, then what's the point in having it in there apart from putting AI on the badge? And to be honest, I think we'll see a bigger push on collaboration inside applications as well in 2025. We've seen a lot of that with a few of our vendors already. Teams working better together when there's commonality. And we talked about that in the asset management and the workflow part of it. It's getting the right tools. Do we have the right speed and the access? Do we need color accuracy? Do we need frame accuracy? Do we have the infrastructure to deal with that thing? Do we bring the application to the media, or do we bring the media to the application? These are things that are massive talking points on how you redesign a workflow. Do we need to decentralize, or do you keep everything centralized? Is the cloud centralizing or decentralizing? That's always an interesting question, because is it private cloud or is it public cloud? And again, always coming back to that issue of, is it secure, and do we have the infrastructure to deal with it, and how does it integrate into something? One thing I've seen certainly over the past year, and I think we'll, certainly as Jigsaw as a business, that vertical blend. So taking the idea of the core post-production and broadcast workflows that we're so used to, they're becoming more and more prevalent in corporate video design and print. Brands and agencies, we're putting stuff in there that you guys have been using for a long time, and vice versa. Actually, some of these guys might be slightly ahead of us because we're with fixed workflows. We even see this in the kind of AV and presentation spaces. If you look at the Sphere, for instance, as a really good example, the workflow that goes into that is nothing short of terrifying. But there's got to be the correct workflow in there to mean that it streamlines and you get the efficiency. So with all this kind of vertical, kind of blends, we did our Adobe portfolio launch in September, looking at roadmaps and tech insights. We did a big case study around the kind of EFL job as well. I also covered a much bigger part of IBC's 2024 as well. But we're looking into a much deeper look into the creative tools and applications that can be used. So, if you take an example of the Adobe Creative Suite, the things that integrating something like a blue chip vendor like EVS, for instance, that as being the front end of your sports workflows. Something like an automated process system like Helmet, for instance, that's driving all of that post-production management, where you might have LucidLink in there, it's dealing with your cloud footage, and then us as a systems integrator. There's a lot of work to do in these areas, and we kind of really want to be the guys that work with you on that. And looking at that huge ecosystem, and that's kind of probably a third of it, I reckon. But I say we're mentioning Adobe only because we did the portfolio. However, that applies to every single one of the creative tools. That could be Avid, that could be Resolve, for instance. We've got to look at it as a wider ecosystem where we've got to tie up the storage, the system, the software integration, the peripherals. These things they seem kind of trivial, really. But if they don't work in a remote workflow, then what's the point? Our job as a solutions company is to basically deliver something that works end to end, right? And if we can't help you along the way, then we're not doing our job right. And that's kind of really where we want to work with you, depending on what the creative tool is at the end. So the way I look at it for 25 is it's all going to be around platform building and integration, using the word again. But vendors are sharing and collaborating more than we've ever seen before. People are wanting vendor or product flexibility. They don't want a kind of vendor lock-in like we've had traditionally, and platforms are being more open. Bespoke platforms with great integrations are the key. We need dynamic workflows, but we also need rigid workflows as well. Some things have to be rigid. But the way I look at it is APIs are really going to be the future of how we drive a platform. So we want to be able to take certain things from certain areas and move them in. Do we want a creative tool with openness, or do we want to be locked in? Which MAM or PAM provider, or DAM, whichever one you want to use, how does that integrate? Do we want to use AI? If we're using AI, how does that integrate into the platform or the creative tool that we're using? We're seeing a lot of storage with built-in AI search and analysis. Those things are, it's fantastic. These are all very new. And it's all about orchestrating and automating our workflows as well. And it's got to drive that content supply chain, drive the product and business management, and drive the discovery of assets and analytics. And it's all about efficiency and return on investment. And I think, as you guys, as business leaders as well, those are the things that I'm sure that are key to you guys. And I use the word platform as well, but I see this as companies looking to basically implement a single platform that could include all of the above. Everything from your kind of onboarding and administration to scheduling to project management, from ingest to your NLE integration to delivery. Do you need all of this? Maybe not. But that platform needs to be able to integrate something at any point to go, right, well actually I need AI, cool. Does it integrate into the platform I've got? No, then you've got the wrong platform. Do I need to integrate with my nonlinear editor, whether it be Avid, Adobe, Resolve, doesn't matter. Can I integrate my platform into that? And can I tie that into, a search, organize, archive, for instance? I think that's really where we need to be looking at. And as Jigsaw, I'd really, as my job title, certainly, I want to kind of work with you guys, and that's my role. It's not so much in the sales process, but actually to talk to you guys about what your current workloads are and how we can help maybe transition you to a kind of platform-based way of working, or even just simplify some of the stuff that are your kind of everyday pain points. Thank you, first of all, to Seagate, our headline sponsor. And I've probably rambled on for too long, keeping you away from the beer. So if you ever do want to come to other of our events, they're all on our website, but if you scan the QR code there, you will find all about them with tech breakfasts, etc., tech events, post-IBC, post-NAB, etc. So yeah, thanks for your time, and I'll catch you at the bar, I'm sure. Thanks.